And so if you don't know the context, it's a little unclear about exactly what Paul is referring to. So in the first verse, the first thing we want to say is that when Paul says, when the perishable puts on the imperishable and the mortal puts on immortality, here he's alluding to his description of two kinds of bodies that he is given in the preceding verses. So in the preceding verses, Paul raised a question that the Corinthians had. Basically what they asked him is, they said, what kind of body will we inhabit in the resurrection? What's it going to be like? And so in order to answer their question, he gives a series of contrasts between the earthly body that we live in now, the fallen body, and then the glorified body that we will receive on the last day and the resurrection of the dead. So I'm not going to read those verses through in any depth, but I'll just give you some of the contrast that he gave. So for example, Paul described the old body, this fallen body, as earthly, perishable, dishonorable, weak, soulish, literally in Greek, psychikos, meaning animated by a natural human soul, of the dust, mortal, and from Adam. So those are some basic characteristics of our bodies. They're earthly, they're perishable, which means they can die. They're dishonorable, which means that we often sin in them. We bring shame to the body. They're weak, right? We can get sick. We can suffer. They are soulish, meaning they're animated by a human soul, right? And that they're from the dust and mortal. So eventually they die. By contrast, he describes the resurrected body, the risen body, with a series of characteristics. So here he says that the resurrected body is heavenly, right? So it's not from the earth, it's from heaven. It's imperishable. It's glorious. Glory here is an interesting word. Whenever we speak about glory, we can talk about the glory of God, which is his awesomeness, his power, his tremendousness, his beauty. And so the glory of the resurrected body is similar. It's going to be awe-inspiring, beautiful, and holy in such a way that it gives glory and praise to God. Right? It's going to magnify the glory of God. He also says the resurrected body will be powerful, right, as opposed to weak, spiritual as opposed to soulish. And here the Greek word is pneumatikos. It means just animated, not just by the human soul, but by the Holy Spirit of God, suffused with the Spirit. It will be from heaven. It will be immortal, right? And it will be from the last Adam, Christ, rather than the first Adam. So two of those characteristics, perishable versus imperishable and mortal versus immortal, are what Paul's picking up on the first verse for this reading. So when he says, when the perishable puts on the imperishable and the mortal puts on immortality, he's not talking in abstractions about perishability or immortality in some kind of, as some kind of mere idea. No, he's actually referring to what he just spoke of. So you can fill it in this way. When the perishable body puts on the imperishable body, or when the mortal body puts on the immortal body, then shall come to pass what is written, death is swallowed up in victory. So he's speaking here about the final resurrection of the dead. And it's fascinating because the image that he's using there for the resurrected body is he's comparing it to a garment that we can take off or put on. So what he's describing here, when he talks about the resurrection, is not that our souls are just separated from our bodies and then go on to live forever in heaven, which is kind of how most people imagine everlasting life or immortality of the soul. No. What he's saying here is that our perishable bodies will put on the garment of imperishability, and our mortal bodies will put on the garment of immortality, so that in this new and glorified state of the resurrection, not only will there be no more sin, not only will there be no more suffering, but ultimately there will also be no more death. Right? We will live on in our bodies, but in such a way that we can never die.